If you're someone looking to make money as a transactional lender, you have to be able to overcome any objections that you face with confidence when it actually counts. I've closed over 200 transactions in the lending space, and if I had to boil down my success to just one word, it's exactly that: confidence. So in this video, I'm going to give you the exact strategies I use to overcome any objections with ease so that you can just take my answers and copy them. There's 8 total. Let's go through them one by one. Objection number 1. I don't need transactional lending. This is one that a lot of you guys ask me about every single day. How do I overcome this objection when somebody doesn't need transactional lending? Well, there's really 2 paths to take. The first one, and the easy one, is that they don't need it. That's not an objection. That's like saying you don't need to be prescribed this medicine, right? Great, move on. It's not a sale. It's not a customer. That's really it. But more importantly with this objection is you can look at the fact of, do they actually understand what they're talking about when they say that? Because if you don't explain yourself well and somebody comes up with that objection, it may not be that they don't need it. It may be that they have no idea what the heck you're talking about. So here's how to overcome this objection. When somebody says they don't need it, I ask the question, if you don't need that, what do you need in your business right now? Now, this may come as a shock, but anybody that's an entrepreneur, whether you're watching this, you're looking to become one in the future, anybody that owns and runs a business, there is always a problem. That's how it works. You're shouldering the responsibility and the risk. There's always going to be a problem. And so when somebody brings that to me, instead of just ending the conversation because, hey, it's a human being, they've got some sort of issue, they're in the business space, I'm in the business space, I'm going to look to overcome that objection by just asking them the simple question: if that's not what you're struggling with, if that's not what you need right now, what do you need? Because I've worked in a lot of different places, I know a lot of different people, and I might be able to help you. And then there's 2 ways that can go, right? One way is they answer with something you can actually help with and you can provide them value. Or the other thing is you might know somebody who you can send them to provide them value. And then guess what? In the future, they might just come back to you if they need anything in the future. So if somebody says they don't need transactional lending, it's not the end of the world. They either A, don't need it at all, or B, you just need to continue that conversation in a different direction. Objection number 2. What do you charge? Now, you may not think this is an objection, but it very well can become an objection very quickly if you don't know how to respond to the question. So when somebody asks you what you charge, they're basically sizing you up, right? They're trying to figure out, hey, is this a good deal? Can I beat this deal somewhere else? Is this something reasonable? Is it something that I want to work with? That's what they're looking for. Here's what you should be looking for in your response to that question. It's not, this is how much I charge. It's, what does your business look like? What kind of deals do you need me to lend on, right? That is how I determine my rates. Let me give you a really, really simple example. If you close 50% of your EMD deals, 50%, right? And you're charging 40%, then only 50% are closing. I know this is kind of mind-boggling, but for those of you that can handle the mental math, that means you're actually only making 20% per transaction, right? Because 1 in every 2 you make 0%, the other one you make 40%, the average of those 2 is 20%, which means you're only making 20% per transaction. Now let's say I have somebody come to me and say, hey Ryan, I close every deal for X, Y, and Z reasons. Here's proof that I've closed the last 20 deals I've done. Do you want to lend on all of my deals at 25%, right? If I was to look at that, even though I usually charge 40%, I would say, okay, 25%, but every deal closes, I'm gonna make more money working with this person than I do in general if I'm only closing 50% of my deals. Makes perfect sense. Now, what's my point in all this? Is that when somebody asks what do you charge, giving them a flat answer right off the bat, I have not found to be an effective way to overcome that objection because it does not allow you to form a relationship. It does not allow you to learn about their business. So what do I say when somebody asks me what do I charge? My response is simple. My rate depends on your business and on the protection of the deal itself. If it has a very clean, guaranteed closing, there's a good chance I'm gonna charge less. That is exactly what I say. And then I take that and I continue on in the conversation and learning those crucial, important factors about the deal instead of just saying, oh, I charge 40% and then guess what happens? They ghost you, right? You want to continue to build the conversation first, push that answer off. If you have to respond to that question, you can tell them that you typically charge 40%, but that number does fluctuate based on the situation. You want to keep it open-ended. Don't give them a closed-ended answer because that's going to leave you in the dust. Objection number 3, you charge too much. Now, this is a response to the prior objection. It is really the overarching objection when it comes to prices and charging in the transactional lending space is somebody saying you charge too much. Now, how can you handle somebody saying you charge too much? Well, the first thing is figure out what their expectations were, right? Because if somebody's never used transactional lending before, they may not understand how significant the risks are. And they're like, dude, typically, in the market, you would only make 10% a year. You're telling me you're charging 40% for 30 days? That's insane, right? They don't understand the market. They don't understand how risky it is. And so their expectations are skewed, and therefore nothing you say is really gonna help you out in this situation other than educating on them on how it works, right? That's how I would shift the conversation in that case. But if somebody has other people that they can work with and you're charging more, then the question becomes, hey, look, the person you're working with now, are you having any troubles, right? Is it a perfect, seamless conversation? Because guess what? If it was perfect and seamless, they probably wouldn't be talking to you right now. So if they're having a conversation with you, they're asking about your rates, they clearly need something, right? Figure out what that something is, and then you can figure out if it's possible for you to solve the situation. Now, my exact response to somebody saying, I charge too much is, you're probably right. But what I found out is that when you go for the cheaper options, you get the cheaper, less experienced results. Are you willing to lose a $10, $15, $20, $25,000 assignment to save yourself $500 with somebody who doesn't know what they're doing? That is my response. And if you partner with me, if you partner with somebody else with experience, then you can leverage that experience, your credibility, your speed, your systems, right? All of those things, you can leverage them to overcome the objection of charging too much. And if none of those things work, guess what? You gotta move on to the next one. Boo-hoo, it's okay. There's other opportunities out there. But one thing that I think a lot of people miss that I want to make sure I point out in this video for you guys is that if you have somebody tell you charge too much, one of your biggest objectives when you're trying to build a lending business is finding suitable borrowers, right? You have just found a suitable borrower. Even if they say you charge too much, even if they don't want to work with you, they are clearly willing and potentially actively borrowing money for the same thing that you're looking to lend money on. So even if you can't work with them on that transaction, that is a hot lead. That is somebody you want to continue following up with. You want to continue looking at ways that you may be able to solve problems in their business. And if they can prove themselves to you, you can prove yourselves to them, then you may be able to form a relationship in the future. So if somebody tells you you're charging too much, make sure that they understand what it is they're actually paying for, and then show them all the ways you can be better than their competition, or better yet, just ask them what they're looking for and then help them solve that thing. Okay, objection number 4 is that I won't pay an upfront fee. Now, in order to explain and overcome this objection, you first have to understand why I charge an upfront fee in the first place, and you probably should too. So back when I started transactional lending, I didn't charge an upfront fee. What I would do is I would take all of my profit, income, whatever you want to call it, on the back end, right? So I'd lend $5,000 EMD, I would get that money plus a profit back at the close of escrow. Now, here's what happened. A lot of the deals that I was doing weren't closing, right? They would back out during the inspection, something would happen, whatever it may be, right? And the deal would not close. In that scenario, I would lend all that money out, I would pay the wire fees, I would have the opportunity cost of having the money out, the time, the effort, signing the contracts, tracking the deal, all that good stuff, communication. And then at the end of the deal, I would get, at best, my principal back, right? Meaning I lost the time, the wire fees, the money and effort, all of those things, and I just got my principal back at the very end, right? Not good business. Definitely not good business, right? So what did I do? I implemented a 1% minimum upfront fee to combat that, right? So that meant that now I was charging 1% upfront. As the deal was progressing, if it didn't close, I still got that 1% fee upfront to at least make sure that I wasn't losing my wire fees and my opportunity costs, which, by the way, 1% is very low, right? A lot of people charge 3, 4, 5 and up percent upfront, up to I've seen as much as 10% upfront, just to ensure that it's actually a transaction you expect to go through. Now, this is really important because now I'm not losing money on deals, but more importantly, if you're working with good borrowers, they should have no issue paying you 1% if they're gonna end up paying you 20, 30, 40% on the back end anyways. Because guess what? If they're paying you that much on the back end and they think that the deal's gonna go through, they expect it to go through, they have confidence in the deal, then why the heck would they not be able to pay you a little bit upfront, right? Now, if they're not willing to pay it to you, like we just brought up in this objection, there's a good chance they're not a borrower you want to work with. However, let me just give it to you very nice and simple. If somebody comes to me and says that they're not willing to pay an upfront fee, my response to them is, no problem. If you have a better solution as to how to pay my team, my wire fees, my time and effort for the deal, I am more than open to any suggestions that you may have. Now, I respond like that every time. I've never gotten a good answer from anybody. So the better response that you can give to this objection is simply stating the reason why you're charging the money, because a lot of people these days are just super skeptical about everything, right? They're super skeptical about scams, about the deal itself, about trusting you. And to be fair, it's because there's a lot of idiots out there that are causing that skepticism. So if somebody's skeptical about it, just explain it. What is the fee for? Why do you charge it? Give them examples from the past of situations that have occurred and why you have to charge this money. Now, people convince themselves that they're some special snowflakes and that they're not gonna, have the same situation as anybody else, which is never true. So you just have to be stern and clear on why you're charging the money, how it works, and as long as they're on the same page, oftentimes you'll have people come around, especially if they need the money. Now, the fifth objection comes from good old-fashioned title companies, and it is them responding, "We cannot answer your questions about this deal." This is probably one of my least favorite objections because title companies are terrible. And if you're watching this video and you work at a title company, do better, because title companies are basically just a bunch of wimps. They refuse to respond to questions. They don't want to give you anything that could possibly in any way make them liable for the deal, even though they're the ones in charge of actually holding your money, potentially your life savings, and ruining your business, right? So a lot of power for somebody that doesn't know how to answer questions. But in order to overcome this objection, here's what you do. First of all, you're going to send them questions to make sure that they understand and agree to the terms of the agreement you have with the person you're lending the money to. If they are not willing to respond to those things, you cannot validify whether or not they're willing to work with you. In that situation, you have two ways to overcome the objection. Number one, you do not do the deal. You back out of the deal, you can't work with them, sorry, money's not protected, I have no idea what's going on, this title company sucks. That's number one. Number two, switch to a title company that doesn't suck. Thank the Lord, there are some good title companies out there. And if you're inside of FundWise, you should have our list of acceptable and helpful title companies so that you don't have to worry about working with all the idiots. So if you run into a situation like that, you can say, hey borrower, look, here's our two options. We either back out of this deal and we can't help you, sorry, or we switch to an actual trusted title company that knows what the heck they're doing. Either one will help you overcome those objections. Either one works. Obviously, one is better than the other. It just depends on the situation. But either way, do not back down to people that are not willing to even protect or at least speak on the situation at hand when it comes to a title company. Objection number 6 is a question from your borrower, and that question is, what if the deal doesn't close? Now, overcoming this objection is really a case-by-case basis. It depends on how you are operating your business. So my response to what if the deal doesn't close is that if the deal doesn't close, we take the principal money back and we do not charge any additional interest. That's how I do it. I'd like to think I'm very, very flexible on those things because a lot of people are going to charge either way. But realistically speaking, if I charge my upfront fee and I am willing to not make any more money on the back end should the deal not close, then I don't have anything to worry about. So my response to that question is simply put, I am not going to charge you any additional money. They're happy. I'm happy as long as that's something I'm willing to do. We overcome that objection and we move on. Now, if you're somebody who runs your business differently, maybe you do require something on the back end, then you're going to have to explain to them why you do what you do, cite examples, give them proof and evidence. That's what people are looking for. They just want a reason behind why you do what you do. So whether it's the upfront fees, whether it's the back end of the transaction, whether it's if the deal does or does not close, as long as you have confidence and legitimate reasons behind your answers, you're typically going to be able to get pretty far with people that have a level head on them. So if somebody asks you what happens if the deal doesn't close, respond honestly. In my case, the way I overcome that objection is I just let them know if it doesn't close, no worries. And I usually like to throw in there something along the lines of, look, I'm in the real estate game as well. I get that not everything always goes according to plan. That's okay. We're not going to ding you for that because we don't want this to be the last time we work together, right? We're going to go do more deals with you in the future. Let's get this one closed out. Let's make sure everything's covered and then we'll move on to the next one. Objection number 7. Why do we have to get a mutual release signed? This is an objection that will come from your borrower oftentimes if you are signing a mutual release. Now, here's the thing about a mutual release. Some people say, oh, there's mutual release states, there's not mutual release states, mutual releases do work, don't work, whatever it may be. The reality is, you're not making that determination based on a state or anything else. You're making that determination based on the responses that you get for the requirements of protecting your money. So, if you land on a deal and there is not something explicitly stating in the contract that you can get that money back and refund it within an inspection period without any additional consent from the seller, from the buyer, from anyone else, and it is signed by all parties, then there's a good chance if anything goes even remotely wrong that they are not going to give you that money back. You're going to have to litigate. You're going to have to go get that money in front of a judge, whatever it may be. So my response to why do we need a mutual release is that I deflect, right? I'm not the one requiring a mutual release. Your title company, your closing attorney is the one requiring that mutual release. I'm simply doing what I'm told by them in order to protect my money. And then I'll usually ask something along the lines of, if this was your money, wouldn't you want to make sure you did everything in your power to ensure it was protected? If they're not willing to be reasonable about that situation, again, really easy red flag that you probably shouldn't be working with them. But in general, if somebody asks you, why do you require a mutual release? Say you don't require a mutual release unless it is explicitly stated that it is required by the borrower, the agent, the title company, the closing attorney that you're working with. Our eighth and final objection comes from somebody who is referring a deal to you. And that question is, how are we going to split up the JV funds? Now, this is a really easy objection to overcome because there's no right answer to this question. This is up to you, and you should have this answer ready right now as we're talking. If you are going to do a deal and I bring you a deal, how much money are you going to give me and how are we going to set it up? Know the answer to it, right? Sign a joint venture agreement, break down who's getting what money, where, when, how, why, all of those things. Make sure they're covered, make sure they're clear, and don't be a loser, right? If somebody brings you a deal, share money with them. Don't you want to do more deals with them in the future? Don't you want to do good business? An additional $500 on a deal will not change your life in any way, I promise. But doing a deal with this same person repeatedly over the next 12 months and having reoccurring revenue can absolutely change everything about everything. So treat people the way you want to be treated. Give them a fair shot at whatever income, whatever funds, whatever money is coming through on these deals. And if somebody asks how you're going to split up the funds, just know the answer based on different situations, based on whose role is what, and all of those good things. And then have a legitimate way to do it, right? Sign a JV agreement, be clear and upfront, get everything covered on the front end so that on the back end, you don't have to worry about it. If you try to hide things at the beginning and then you try and cover them later on, that's where all the problems come up. So for the eighth objection of asking how you split up those funds, just let them know, here's the way I do it. If you're cool with it, let's do it. If you're not, let's talk about it some more. Be reasonable, and that's an easy one to overcome. Now, this video has broken down 8 of the most common objections that I get on a day-to-day basis, and a lot of you guys have probably seen as well, but there is so many more objections that I couldn't cover in just one video. So if you want to learn the entire lending process from front to back, the way that I've done it and so many other people have done it in order to be successful, I made a 4-hour masterclass. It's completely free. If you click the first link in the description, you can go to that masterclass, watch the entire thing, and by the end of it, you will know more than 99% of people about transactional lending. Because guess what? A lot of people talk about it, not many people actually do it. Go learn from people who are actually doing it. It will turbocharge your success. Yes, you can replace your income. Yes, you can change your life the way that I have with transactional lending and so many other people have as well. So click the first link in the description if you want to check out that 4-hour masterclass for free, and I will see you guys in the next video.